Thanks for tuning in to CPA Life, where we talk culture and growth with folks that are going against the grain in an industry that has been stuck with a "we've always done it that way" mindset for far too long. Join host John Randolph and learn how a sustainable, family-friendly career in public accounting doesn't have to be the exception to the rule. Welcome to CPA Life.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the CPA Life podcast, the podcast that focuses on talking to firm leaders and industry change agents from around the country who are committed to proving that you can build a highly successful, people-focused firm in today's world. And today, we're going to spend some time talking to someone who's doing just that. James Rainwater is the owner, principal, and founder of Rainwater CPA, a fully remote tax and accounting advisory firm that is based in Maryland, but with a fully remote work staff. James, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, John.
Excited to dig in, learn a little bit more about the firm, kind of what you're doing, where you've came from. We're gonna jump into all that pretty quickly and talk about some of the things that you've focused on as you've been building your firm, some of the non-negotiables that have been cornerstones to your success. But before we do that, we really like to learn more about your background, kind of where you've come from and how you've evolved to the point that you're at today in your career. So give me a snapshot of what that looks like.
Sure. So I have a very non-traditional accounting background where I've kind of bounced all over the place. Started as an AP clerk in the early 90s while I was finishing up my degree at night. Eventually got my degree, got my CPA, went on to get my master's degree, but did a mixture of working in private where, like I said, I started as accounts payable clerk, worked my way up into the accounting department, decided to go work in public for a little while, went to CohnReznick and worked there in their audit division, bounced back and forth between their tax division and audit to figure out what I liked. Started really liking tax, but then went back into private for a little while because I thought I'd like that because I thought I hated public accounting. Nothing against CohnReznick and that group. They're a wonderful firm, but I thought I hated public. And then I went into private for a few years, controller, CFO, director of finance, and then realized I've really missed public. I really missed working with clients, really wanted to, have that type of day where I was working with different clients, helping people, making, an impact in businesses. So started my own firm, built a small firm, eventually sold that, went back into private for a little bit, and then started this firm that we have now in 2012. Along the way, I also spent a couple of years teaching at the University of Maryland, which I really enjoy teaching. And that has been something we've incorporated in the firm, but I didn't necessarily enjoy teaching at the university level. So that's something that was fun. It's a lot of work at the university level, but teaching has been like a core component now in the way that we run our firm. That's the high level.
So you definitely have a very non-traditional path that you've taken to kind of get to where you are today. But one thing that is traditional, I will say something you just said is the conversation so many times we have with candidates, and we've talked about this, that the mindset when we talk to candidates in our recruiting business is, I hate public accounting, get me out of here, don't like what I do. And so many times really the conversation turns into getting people to understand it's not what you do that you hate. It's probably where you do it or the type of work that you're doing where you do it.
Exactly.
Because there's a lot of dynamics and exciting things that you're doing within that, like you talk about, in the variety of it. So when you think about the things that you missed, what were some of the key components of public accounting that you look back on and go, man, I missed these things? Or even on the other side of things, these things on the corporate side of thing were driving me crazy.
Yeah, so on the corporate side of thing, I'll answer that one first, because going to the same office every day, knowing, depending on what day of the month it was, what I was going to be doing, that kind of, monotony I didn't enjoy. I worked with some great firms, we built some great stuff, but just that everyday routineness of knowing exactly what my job, my day was going to look like, I did not enjoy that a whole lot. With the public, I enjoy talking to different clients. 1 hour, I'm talking to a client about their tax strategy. The next hour, I'm talking about how we might be able to help them grow their business. I'm constantly amazed at how many different ways there are to make money in this world, and the different types of
Hmm.
businesses that we work with and the different ways that they make money and they've built their businesses. And I get to see all that. I get to see the nuts and bolts of it and work with the owners of those firms. That's fun for me. I enjoy that a lot. I enjoy that variety and seeing the different things and seeing what people are creating and building and being a part of that, and then tangibly being able to help them with that is super fun for us.
I've got a mentor in my life, and one of my pet peeves in the world we live in today is we tend to paint with very broad strokes whenever we talk about people or groups of people or whatever the case may be. And Greg and I, this my mentor, one of my mentors that I've got, Greg and I have always marveled about how there are people in this world that talk about how they can't find a way to make money or they can't find a job or they can't, things like that. And we talk about the different ways that we see people in this world make money. And yes, sometimes you got to have money to make money, but sometimes you just got to have an ingenious mind that figures out a way to, put two and two together and make money. So I'm sure that, again, like you're talking about in your space, you've seen some interesting things where you walk away and go, man, I would have never thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times it just boils down to, solving a problem for somebody. Like if you can find a problem that you can solve for someone else, will probably pay you to solve that
Hmm.
problem, whether it's a dirty car or how to sell more widgets or, whatever that is. It really, a lot of times just comes down to what kind of problem can you solve, and you can make money if you can figure that out.
Talk to me about kind of you mentioned you started a firm before, you sold that,
Mhm.
restarted a firm. Are there differences in the firm that you originally started and had and the firm that you have today? And what are those differences? And what were some things that you learned with your predecessor firm that today you're saying, this worked in 2000, 2001, 2002, whatever the years were, versus, hey, today this probably isn't going to work. We got to do things differently.
It's funny because we've talked about this a little bit kind of around the edges, where that first firm was like the traditional type of CPA firm where we did payroll, we did, accounts payable, accounts receivable, we did monthly bookkeeping, year end cleanup, tax prep, and we did some business, but a lot of individual 1040s. So I would just work like crazy during tax season, 90, 100-hour weeks
Hmm.
to get through tax season and get all those returns done. And I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy working that way. This is exactly in the early 2001 2002 timeframe when it was kind of pre social media. It was, you got business by being out there on the street and going to networking meetings and chamber of commerce and all that kind of stuff to drum up business and try to meet business owners that were, you know, ready to make a switch. This is a hard way to do it, especially as a small firm owner. I had one person helping me at the time, and trying to get all the work done and get new business was just exhausting. I said, I need to sell this. Maybe I do belong back in private. So that's what I did. And now the new firm, yeah, it's totally different. Whole different business model. We only work with business owners, a couple of high net worth individuals, but 95% of our clients are business owners. We do strategy planning. We do the tax prep as well, but mostly that strategy and that planning, we have a different business model. We have social media and advertising and all those great ways to get new clients that are predictable and repeatable versus just hoping we get a new client this week. So much, much different firm, and a lot more fun to run and be a part of now.
Let's talk a little bit about the business development aspect. And we were talking about this before we started recording, that there's just a different world and a different mindset. And I was telling you about a candidate I spoke to recently that wanted to leave the firm he was with. He was on a partner track. And his most recent review was, hey, this is an 8 to 10 year track that you're on because you got to build a $500,000 book of business by learning how to play golf and going to Chamber of Commerce and Rotary Club meetings and all of these things. And as you and I have talked about, that's not a part of your business.
No, not at
The
all.
flip side of that, though, is if somebody is on Facebook, if somebody's on Instagram and they're looking at tax related info, there's a pretty high likelihood that James Rainwater is going to pop up on their feed somewhere. Where did that start from? How does that play out? What does it look like in your organization? What platforms are you on? And how have you found that to work different and or better than traditional business development mindsets.
Yeah, it never made sense to me that we're going to take somebody that is great at tax, promote them to manager, and then promote them to partner and say, you're great at tax. Now you're going to be great at sales and marketing, and have to go out and, and recruit people to be clients of the firm. Like that doesn't make sense to me. And there's no other business, really that exists like that other than CPA firms, attorneys, maybe a few other firms. So we wanted to change that and say, we advise our clients, hey, you need predictable, repeatable revenue and sales in your business to be sustainable. Wasn't that the same for us? Like, why don't we run this like a real business and get repeatable, predictable sales in our business? So that's where we switched over. And it was a very iterative process. We didn't start where we are now. We're on all major platforms now. We've got email campaigns, newsletters. We have, short form content that goes out every day, long form webinars that we do every month. We have teams that cut that up and put that out. We have a whole advertising team that runs our ads on Facebook and Instagram. So we're all over the place now, but it just started with LinkedIn. Like, let's get some marketing, let's dial in our messaging on LinkedIn, maybe some email campaigns, figure out our product market fit, figure out, how to communicate to clients and solve their problems. And then we just kept building on that to get to where we are now, to where we've got, the sales is done not even by me anymore, by our sales team. They handle the new sales. We've got all the marketing and advertising that brings those leads in. And it's surprising to me sometimes that an owner of a $50 million business will click on an ad on Facebook, and that's how they find us. But that's how it works. That's our economy now. Like I said, it's a much more fun way to do business than Chamber of Commerce meetings.
Well, and I think the other value proposition in that from a business standpoint for you is we're not limited to the 10-mile radius of our office and have to be a generalist provider of, hey, we've got a doctor over here, we've got a computer design person over here, we've got an engineer over here, we've got a financial planner over here, we've got all these different people in the space that you're playing in. You can dial in that message and target a little bit more. And it doesn't matter if that person sits in, your neck of the woods in Baltimore, or if that person's sitting in Florida, Texas, or Nevada.
Yeah. We can target for the problem that we solve, the solution that our clients need, versus trying to target geographically to a fixed number of businesses. And I'd imagine most towns are the same, but there's hundreds of CPA firms here in Baltimore, and we're all competing for that same geography versus, competing for solving a specific problem. That's a much better way to reach clients that have a need right now.
What do you say to the person that you're talking to, whether it's, someone that you're sitting down face to face with, or as you mentioned, we talked, you do coaching with other firm owners, or even someone watching this podcast, listening to it, the person that says, hey, yeah, that's great, but how do you build a relationship with a guy sitting in Las Vegas, Nevada, or Boise, Idaho, when you can't go to his office and, grab a bite to eat with him?
It's a good question. It's definitely harder, virtually, to build those relationships. But we're starting that relationship by, hey, we're going to save you $50,000 or $100,000 in taxes by working with us. That's a much better way to start a relationship than, salads or whatever, steak at lunch. So not that those things aren't great for relationship building, but our relationship with a client starts out much differently because we're doing that plan for them right out of the gate, and we're making impact, we're getting results. Versus some people disagree with me, but I think tax prep on its own is starting to become a commodity. So that's very different, starting a relationship, but with a commodity sale versus an advisory sale where we're actually helping them, making an impact in their business. So that gets that relationship off to a better start.
It's interesting. I think the most recent statistic that I saw is that people under the age of, I don't remember if it was 40 or 45, 63% of the people under the age of 40 or 45 are either currently in or have been at some point in their life a relationship, a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, whatever it may be. They're in a relationship that started online.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a prospective client a few weeks ago, and his concern was, and when we were talking more about people and hiring people and remote people, and his concern was, how do you build that connectivity, that culture? And I said, look, we just live in a world today where if people are willing to start something as intimate as a relationship that could last a lifetime, if they're willing to start that over a computer connection, what makes you think that person has a problem starting that connection as an employee, employer, or client, service deliverer?
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking about my fiance, before we started today, and her and I met online. And
Yep.
that's how our relationship originally started. And, now we're living together and engaged. So it's very possible. And with sales, it's very, you talk to, sales experts and coaches, and volume is usually the issue.
Hmm.
And getting through volume in a local geography is tough because you're somewhat limited. But when you've got the whole nation to reach out to through the channels that we do, we can get volume that it's just amazing, and allows us to grow at crazy rates for accounting firms.
Talk to me about that growth, because again, we've talked about the growth of your firm. Really over the last, let's say, 5 years, what kind of growth have you seen as a firm year over year in that time frame?
Yeah, it's super exciting. We've doubled in size over the last 3 years repeatedly. We made the Inc. 5000 list for 2023. We were in the top 1,000 fastest growing businesses, private businesses in the country, which is almost unheard of for a
Hmm.
CPA firm to place in the Inc. 5000, much less in the top 1,000 firms. So that tells me that we've got a couple of things right. We've got that product market fit pretty dialed in. And then our model for acquiring new clients is working, and then we're delivering that value because they stick around. So that growth, and then being recognized by, Inc. 5000 is kind of a testament to, we're not perfect. We don't get everything right.
Right.
We're working on things, but we get a lot of things right in that mix that allows us to grow and add clients.
And just think about it. I mean, if we measured success in the public accounting advisory space the same way that success is measured in baseball, all you got to do is get it right 3 times out of 10,
Yeah.
and you're in the Hall of Fame. So, you're getting it right a whole lot more than that. I want to talk about another topic that, tends to be, can be a fairly divisive topic in the space that we play in today when it comes to service delivery, when it comes to building a culture, when it comes to growing your firm at the pace that you've grown. Obviously, you need people to do that.
Yeah.
And not only have you bought into a, geographic agnostic client mentality, you also run a geographic agnostic firm when it comes to your employees. It doesn't matter where that person sits. Let's get the best person in the game for us. How has that worked for you? When did you make that transition? And what have been some of the hurdles to get to the point of where you are today? And again, probably still not doing everything right, but you're learning along the way.
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning experience. Getting the right people on board has been challenging, and I've learned a tremendous amount about recruiting. We started with remote work right out of the gate. Like everybody from our team, our first employee was remote on the East Coast, second employee was remote on the East Coast. You mentioned I'm in Baltimore. We don't have any employees other than me in Maryland. Everybody's spread out. We've got people in every time zone now, which is nice because we have clients in every time zone. So we're all over the place. And I've just found that, again, just like clients, we're finding team members and people that want to work with us. If I'm restricted to Baltimore, I have a very restricted candidate set that's out there and available looking to make a change with the characteristics we're looking for right now that would be a good fit. But if we can open that up nationwide, that's exciting because now we can recruit from, a much larger pool, look for people that are amazing, but maybe can't commute to an office, or especially not our office, but it just opens up that world of getting the right people. And we can be a little bit more picky too, because we're looking for the right skill set. We're looking for somebody that's going to fit our culture, that's going to enjoy the work that we do. So we can kind of be a little bit more picky in all those things because we have a lot more people to choose from.
Yep, absolutely. You tend to be able to make that sifter, if you will, a little tighter and pick and choose what I'm willing to give on,
Yeah.
the things that are non-negotiable, the things that are negotiable. What do we have to look at? Whereas if you're in a smaller market, even in your case, being in the Baltimore area, even though somebody lives in Baltimore, it still could be an hour commute, hour and a half commute,
Easy.
depending on traffic and where they're coming from. If you had said, hey, I need you in the office 3 days, 4 days, 5 days a week. What have been the challenges in your mind that you guys have faced building a culture that you want to build with the people that you want to build it with everybody deployed?
So communication is probably the biggest one, where communication has to be really intentional because, we're all in our home offices spread out across the country,
Hmm.
and, make sure everyone feels connected to the team and feels a part of the team. Quite honestly, we're not for everybody. There's a lot of people in the industry that would probably not enjoy working here. But for the person that is right and, does fit with our culture, they would love it here. And, having the tools, the right tools, it took a while to kind of get those right, our tech stack and how we communicate and how we interact with each other and the cadence of meetings and those kinds of things. We're rough at first to figure out, but I think we've got a pretty good way that we do that now, and works for the most part. Like I said, we're not.
One of the things that you mentioned just now that I think is so critical for people to not just glance over, because I think it really does boil down to this one simple word, but not a simple act, and that is intentional. In a non remote, even if it's hybrid in the office 2, 3 days a week, you really don't have to be as intentional about it, because you're going to walk by people's desks, you're going to pass each other in the hallway, you're going to stumble across each other in the kitchen, and you can have some of those conversations. How's life? How's the project you're working on? Where do things stand with this client? Hey, you looked a little stressed. Is there anything that I can do to help you out today? All of those things happen, but in a remote environment, as I always tell candidates when I talk to them, we're always looking for people when we're talking about remote roles, people that have a little bit of a proactive mindset to the way that they attack work. Because I always tell candidates, no one's going to show up at your house at 8 o'clock in the morning to knock on the door and say, hey, how are you doing today? You need to be the kind of person that if you're challenged with something, if a problem arises, if there's something that's going on, you need to be the kind of person that has no problem raising your hand and saying, hey, I'm stuck. I need help,
Mhm.
those kind of things. And so, how do you build that cadence? Because obviously, as a firm owner, you've still got to deliver for your clients. Plus, you're also dealing with global problems in the firm. How do you build that into your cadence of your day or your week to make sure that Bill, Sally, Sue, and Tom are getting what they need from me as a leader day in and day out, week in and week out?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's definitely, something we're still working on, and I think it's something we've done a really good job at. I've heard, in the industry, a lot of firms are going back to being in the office, and they say that, remote doesn't work. Everybody needs to be in the office. And I really take issue with that. I disagree with that. I think it's not that remote doesn't work. Like, let's say that we don't have a management structure and a communication structure in place to support remote work, because that's, I think, really what the problem is, not that remote work doesn't work. So, if somebody has like a personal issue, I don't expect them to jump into the general chat and announce that. But we do have relationships in the firm where that I think everybody in our firm has somebody that they can communicate with about an issue and bring that to. We also we have, team meetings weekly. We have one-on-one check-ins where that would come up. So that's where that intentionality on both sides comes into play, where, as a team member, you have to remember, like, nobody's there to see the look on your face necessarily to read you and see that something's wrong. You kind of need to bring that in. But on the same, on the other side, I guess, we give you the opportunity to share that too, through the one-on-ones and team meetings and so forth. Whether it's professional issue, personal issue, it's kind of woven into our culture.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, it comes back to that issue of intentionality. I can't agree with you more emphatically about the fact that it's not that remote doesn't work, it's that we haven't set up systems, processes, training, development. One of the things that we started asking firms through conversations over the last 3 to 6 months, especially firms that have any kind of a remote component to their business, whether it's hybrid or fully remote, is when we start talking about employee development, when we start talking about retention, one of the questions we've been asking people is how much of your training and development dollars or time over the last year have been focused on either one, teaching your leaders how to be more effective leaders in a remote environment, or teaching your employees how to be a better employee and team member in a remote environment. I don't think that those are natural skills that we have because it's not what we've been conditioned to
Right.
through the course of our life. So to throw people in that and to say, hey, figure it out, I don't think is the answer. And what's been interesting, James, from our standpoint, is when we pose that question to the clients in our Talent Plus advisory business that we're working with, 100% of the clients to date, the answer is zero. We have zero focused dollars or time that is going towards employee or leadership development as it pertains to remote work, remote leadership.
Yeah, it's definitely an investment. It is a time and financial investment to get that right and to get that working. And it's interesting because I'll bring up another one of my kind of pet peeves with the industry is kind of we're on the older age side of the spectrum in the industry where it does take a lot more work, a lot more intentionality for someone my age to make the one line work.
Hmm.
But it's fun when like we have some really young team members, they come to it natively. Like they know
Yes.
how to work in this environment and they enjoy it. They appreciate it. You don't have to tell them to communicate and be intentional about it. Like it just happens. So it's fun to have that as part of the culture too, where, sometimes I'm learning from them, how to make it better and how to improve it. But like you said, it takes time, it takes work, and it takes money to
Hmm.
make it work in this environment, especially like our team's growing pretty rapidly to be able to keep growing and have the size team that we have and make that work definitely takes effort.
Yep. And you're right. It's that generation that it is a little bit more ingrained in who they are. It's a little bit more of their fiber, as you put it. They come to it natively. There's some things that we can learn from them. There were communication issues we had in our firm because we're a remote firm, and there were some communication issues in the beginning of remote that I had. And I had a couple of my younger staff come to me and say, hey, we could try this platform and it would make it a little bit smoother other than just sending a bunch of emails or text messages to each other.
Yeah,
So we moved things to Slack, and then we moved things to a platform called Monday, and then we moved back to Teams. And, but we're figuring it out along the way.
yeah,
And I've made it very clear I'm probably not the best guy to figure this out. So,
I get
unless you
that.
get, I joke and tell them, look, unless you guys want to go back to, phone calls and smoke signals, I'm probably not the best guy to ask of this. Just tell me what you guys want, show me how to use it, and we'll make it work. That's kind of what we've done. So it's funny you say that because it is teaching us new muscles and learning how to become accustomed to that. I'm reading a book right now called Attributes, and it talks about the inherent attributes that we all have. And I know that you and I have talked about the culture index that you use
Yeah,
when you're looking at people. And this really focuses a lot on those attributes, the book that I'm reading. And one of the things this guy was talking about is how we train our brains to deal with things in a certain manner. And his example he used is whether you walk into a Target in Baltimore, Maryland, Dallas, Texas, Los Angeles, California, there's a mindset we have trained ourselves to have when we walk into that Target. And we know what we're dealing with because it's Target. And for the most part, it's the same. He said, now imagine, if you will, you walk into that Target, but when you walk in, there's an Olympic sized pool and there's people swimming. The minute you step in the door, you're going to have to go through a whole reframe of what is this place and how do I get around it to get whatever it is that I need. That stuff is still there. It's just learning how to deal with it. And I think that it's the same thing when you start talking about the remote aspect of the world that we're in today. There's some things that in our generation, my generation, yours, and generation that's in the middle of that we were just used to rolling out of bed, putting on our clothes, whether it was a suit and tie years ago or business casual, and driving to the office, seeing people doing our work. And that kind of goes back to the business development piece of things. We're going through an evolution where there's still going to be that. I don't think it's ever going to go away completely, but firms are going to have to get on board that people are going to be more demanding about the flexibility they want from an in-office requirement. And I agree with you. I think it's a cop out when you say it's hard and it's not easy to do and it can't be done. It can be done. It's just hard, and you need to find a way to make it work.
We've got team members that have never been in an office. I mean, they've never been in a meeting in a conference room. That's a foreign thing to them, but they've been on Discord for years, and that's natural to them,
Yeah.
and it works really well with us. Like you said, it's a definite reframing of how you do business and meeting in person. I enjoy in-person meetings. That's not going to go away. That's really important, connecting with people one-on-one in person. But, it doesn't mean service delivery has to always be that way.
Yep. When you look at one-on-one or you look at people getting together, I know that a lot of the remote firms that we work with, either they're currently doing it or there's things that they put in place to begin to do it because just of, with growth, trying to do things either annually, semi-annually, with bringing people together to build a little bit of that connective tissue, as I call it. Is that something that you guys do as a firm? Is it something that's in place? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we've been a little behind on putting that together. We've got plans for, a retreat to bring everybody together, something we want to do at least once a year, where we bring everybody together and meet in person. We've grown, like we were talking about earlier, grown so rapidly, and the team has expanded so quickly. We haven't done that yet, but that's definitely something that we want to do and get everybody together and see each other as real people and in 3D instead of just in Slack and on Zoom.
Absolutely. One of the other things I want to touch on is that, again, you and I have talked about in regards to how you put your business together versus how it looked a decade ago, 2 decades ago. Your pricing model is a subscription based pricing model. Is that 100% of the clients you work with? Is it, maybe not 100%, but hey, that's the rule. We deal with the exception when it arises. And how have you gone about growing the business in that space and not feel like either one, I'm leaving business on the table by holding this line or not getting the potential business that you could be getting? What's been your view on that?
Yeah, so we're all subscription based. We have a few clients that are not subscription based, really nothing that's hourly. We do annual tax prep, but we still kind of consider that subscription based because it's fixed fee annual prep. We do resolution and we do some specialty tax products like R&D and cost segregation, but that's all fixed fee. We don't do hourly. We did a lot of research and studying on pricing and, what should a job look like. And we don't always get it right. Like we've got a client that, just recently we had where like we blew the hours and blew the budget we had on that client, but that's really rare. So if we get pricing right, 80 to 90% of the time, it's not an issue. So that has always been important to me because when we're talking to a business owner, if we can say, like, this is what your price is going to be, we know that ahead of time, this is what you can plan on and budget for. That helps them. It takes out the uncertainty of getting a bill 30 days after the work is done and being shocked, by you've been at the manager or partner level in a firm, you've seen that client that comes back, they're mad they got a big bill. Now you've already eaten some of that time that you didn't even bill them for. Now you have to renegotiate that price and maybe eat some more time to make the client happy or they pay it or, however that works. It's just not the foundation for a good relationship. And if we can agree on that price ahead of time, this is what the price is going to be. I've done my research, so I know what the price should be based on the work you're bringing to us. That's a much happier relationship at our firm and with our clients. And it's more of an adult relationship, I think, where we just have the hard conversation up front, then we go and do the work. Like I said, we don't always get that right. Sometimes we have to come back and rework it, or they don't tell us about 5 partnerships that they forgot about somehow, and we have to come back and reprice it. That one we will reprice up front. But overall, that model works much better for us at the moment. And this is something we've talked about changing, but we don't even track time.
Mm-hmm.
So we focus on getting the pricing right, getting the right people on the job, and then we're not really worried about billing hourly or tracking people's, every 10-minute increment right now.
Well, and I think that from a value perspective internally, it becomes an issue of, hey, we're adults, let's just get the job done.
Yeah.
Let's knock it out. Let's make it happen. Let's get the job done. On the flip side, from the value standpoint from the potential client, there's value in not having to worry about, hey, if I call James with this question, at what point in the conversation does he flip on the meter and start charging me? I can just call him. I mean, obviously, 2 calls a week is probably going to be a little excessive, but if I got a problem, if I got a question, if I got an issue, if there's something I'm thinking about, I know I can call and say, hey, can I bounce something off you?
Yeah, and we did a lot of research on that side too of, what's the right cadence for meeting with a client. And we finally settled on quarterly. We meet with our clients every quarter, go through their tax projections, go through their plan, make sure everything looks good, or we make changes if we need to. We also answer any questions that they have. And that cuts down those phone calls and those emails. We still get phone calls and emails, but it's considerably less because we're being, again, intentional about scheduling those meetings every 3 months to meet with them, go through their taxes, and then answer any questions. They can think of stuff that they've been putting together over the last 3 months to ask us when we meet, or things that may be coming up in the next 3 to 6 months that they want to go through. So that intentionality helps a lot with the clients too, and takes away a lot of that, phone calls throughout the day and random emails. Helps a lot with that.
Well, you've obviously done a lot of things right and probably some things not so right. As you said, we're still working on some stuff.
Plenty of mistakes.
Either way, you learn from both of those. And that's the beauty of, moving forward and making mistakes and adjusting and getting them right eventually down the line. If there are firm owners out there or even potential candidates that are thinking about a possible career change going into 2025 tax season, or a firm owner that's thinking, man, I've been hearing about taking this step and putting my toe in the waters of social media and getting my name and my brand out there a little bit more. If there's anybody that's out there thinking, hey, James may be able to help me with some of this, James may be able to give me an idea of what I'm dealing with, what's the best way for people to reach out to you? What's the best place for people to find you?
If you Google Rainwater CPA, you'll get all of our socials. We're pretty much except for YouTube, we've got some weird username, but everywhere else we're Rainwater CPA, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, as Rainwater CPA. Our website's rainwatercpa.com. I'm James at rainwatercpa.com. So we're pretty easy to find by design.
Well, I'll make sure that we have all those links in the show notes down below. And I want to thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day and talking to us about kind of where you've come from, the success you've had, and may you continue to have that kind of success. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. And it was a fun conversation. Thanks for having me.
You are more than welcome. Thank you all that have spent some time listening to today's episode. If you like what you've heard, we'd love it if you could leave a comment below or a like. And also, don't forget, hit that subscribe button on the platform of your choice so you don't miss any future episodes of the podcast. Until next time, have a great day.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting app, leave a 5-star rating, and visit our website for links and show notes at cpalifepodcast.com. We'll see you next time on CPA Life. ProfessionalProductions.net